No one could calm the millionaire, until a single father did the impossible. Before we begin, just know, no matter where you are in the world, I'm glad you're here. There is a kind of man the world manufactures in silence, not in universities, not in boardrooms, not on the covers of magazines. He is made in the dark hours before dawn, when the alarm goes off and the body protests and the bank account is thin and still he gets up. He laces his boots. He makes the coffee. He checks on his boy. Adam Cole was that kind of man, 33 years old, and some mornings his back ached like he was twice that. Not from injury, not from accident, from the particular weight of a life carried without help, without complaint, without anyone standing in the doorway to ask, "How are you holding up?" Nobody asked Adam Cole that question. Not anymore. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 5:14 in the morning, the light flickering once the way it always did, and he looked at the face staring back at him, the jaw, the eyes, the small scar just above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall that his grandmother had pressed a cold cloth against while she told him, calm as oak, that pain was just the body paying attention. He had never forgotten that. Lucas was still asleep. 7 years old, and even in sleep the boy had a dignity to him. Arms folded across his chest, brow slightly furrowed, like he was working out some serious problem in his dreams. Adam stood in the doorway of the small bedroom for a long moment, the way he did every morning, just watching, just grateful, it was the purest thing in his life. He pulled the door closed without a sound and went to make the breakfast. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, one of which was more closet than room. The kitchen window looked out onto a brick wall, and on clear mornings the light came over the roof line and slanted in orange and gold for about 20 minutes before turning flat and white. Adam had learned to time his coffee to those 20 minutes. It was one of the small luxuries he'd built for himself, the kind that cost nothing and meant everything. He scrambled 2 eggs, cut the crusts off the toast the way Lucas liked, set the orange juice glass on the left side of the plate, always the left, because the boy was 6 months into learning that he was left-handed, and Adam had started building the world around that without being asked and without making a production of it. That was how Adam loved. Without fanfare, without audience. By 6:30, Lucas was at the table, hair still wild, still wearing the Cleveland Browns t-shirt he'd slept in, and he was telling Adam about a dream involving a dragon that could only breathe spaghetti. Adam listened. Completely. Not the half-listening of a tired man humoring a child, but the real thing. Eyes steady, body turned toward the boy, asking follow-up questions. What color was the dragon? Did it know it was weird? Was the spaghetti at least al dente? Lucas laughed at the last one and said, "What's al dente, Daddy?" And Adam explained, patiently, carefully, the way his grandmother had explained things to him. By 7:15, Lucas was on the school bus, backpack bouncing, turning once to wave through the glass, and Adam was walking the 6 blocks to the bus stop that would take him to work. He was a custodial worker at Nexus Digital Solutions, a software company in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where the lobby had a waterfall feature and the receptionist wore clothes that cost more than his rent. He had been working there for 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. He knew the building the way soldiers know terrain, every corner, every schedule, every mood of the fluorescent lights in the executive hallway. His supervisor was a decent man named Gerald who left him alone and trusted the work. His co-workers were 2 women named Paz and Dolores who had adopted Adam in the gentle, fierce way that certain older women adopt men they decide are worth the trouble. Paz brought him tamales on Tuesdays. Dolores occasionally slipped motivational quotes under his locker door, which she denied doing even as she did it. These were his people. He was invisible to everyone else. That was fine. Adam Cole had long made his peace with invisibility. He moved through the marble corridors with a quiet competence that was almost meditative, a man fully at home in the unglamorous work of keeping beautiful spaces clean. He pressed no ego into the mop. He carried no bitterness into the executive suite. He did what needed doing, and he did it well, and he went home to his son. It was enough. Most days, it was enough. The first time Richard Harmon noticed Adam existed, it was to point out that Adam had missed a scuff mark near the elevator bank on the 14th floor. Harmon was the chief operating officer of Nexus Digital Solutions, 46 years old, with the particular confidence of a man who had never once in his adult life been told no and meant it. He wore suits that fit like architecture. He moved through the company like a weather system. Everyone adjusted their behavior when he appeared, and everyone exhaled when he left. He had pointed at the scuff mark without looking at Adam, just aimed his finger like a weapon and said, "That, do something about that," and then walked away mid-sentence into a conversation about Q3 projections. Adam had cleaned the scuff, said nothing, gone back to his cart. But he had noticed the way Harmon's assistant had looked at Adam in that moment. A quick apologetic glance there and gone, the look of a person who had been in the vicinity of small cruelties often enough to recognize them and feel the shame of proximity. That was 6 months ago. Since then, Harmon had spoken to Adam maybe 4 more times, never by name, always directive, always the same gesture, the pointed finger, the half-turned shoulder, the man being dismissed before he had even been fully acknowledged. Adam did not allow it to break him. He had been through worse, rebuilt himself out of necessity and love for his son, and he would not come apart now over a man with expensive cufflinks and a pointed finger. But he remembered. Adam Cole had a quiet, precise memory. He stored things. The morning of Tuesday, March the 17th, was indistinguishable from any other morning until it was not. Adam arrived at 7:45 as always, changed into his uniform, checked his assignments. The executive floor, the 14th, had a major event. A funding presentation. Victoria Shaw, the company's founder and CEO, was meeting with a consortium of investors from New York and London. Gerald had flagged it. All common areas on 14 to be spotless by 8:30. All service staff to maintain minimum visible footprint during the event window. Adam worked the floor carefully, methodically. By 9 o'clock, the investors had arrived. He could see them through the glass. 6 of them. Dark suits, the particular body language of people who had written large checks before and were considering writing them again. Victoria Shaw stood at the head of the room, 29 years old, though she carried herself with the authority of someone twice that. She had built Nexus from a single idea in a shared office space into a company valued at $400 million. She was sharp, driven, the kind of woman who had taken every room she ever walked into and slowly, quietly, rearranged the furniture. But this morning something was different. Adam noticed it before anyone else did. He noticed it the way a man who has spent years attuned to silence notices the absence of a sound that should be there. Victoria Shaw was standing at the head of that room, presenting, her voice even and her slides flawless. And she was falling apart. Quietly. Internally. The way fires start in walls where no one can see. Her hands first. The way she gripped the presentation clicker with a force that was slightly wrong, not the grip of a confident woman making a point, but of a person holding on. Then the breathing, a small hitch between sentences barely perceptible. Then the eyes, moving too fast across the faces of the investors, searching for something safe to land on and finding nothing. Adam paused with his cart near the hallway door. He should not have been watching, but he watched. Mid-sentence, in front of 6 investors and an audience of her own executive team, Victoria Shaw stopped. Her mouth remained open for a half-second. The clicker fell from her hand and hit the conference table with a sound like a small stone dropped into still water. She pressed both palms flat against the table, and the room went rigid with the particular tension of powerful people suddenly confronted with something they had no protocol for. A panic attack. Adam had seen them before. He knew what they looked like from the inside and the outside. He had held people through them. He knew the particular terror of being trapped inside your own body while your mind turns against you. And he knew, with a certainty that bypassed thought entirely, that nobody in that room was going to move. Richard Harmon, seated to her right, leaned slightly back. Not forward. Back. The gesture of a man calibrating his distance from a situation that might damage him by proximity. The investors exchanged small, precise, devastating glances, the kind that calculated value and liability in the same motion. No one moved. No one spoke. And Adam Cole set down his cart, straightened his shoulders, and pushed open the door. The room turned to look at him the way rooms turn when something unexpected enters, with the particular stillness of people who have not decided yet whether to be annoyed or alarmed. Adam did not look at them. He walked directly to Victoria Shaw. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He moved with the same calm economy he brought to every task, and he stood close enough to her that his voice would reach only her, and he said quietly, in a tone so level it might have been mistaken for someone reading a weather report, "You're okay. You're in your building. This is your room." She looked at him. Her eyes were glassy, pupils slightly large, the particular look of someone whose nervous system had overridden their reason. She didn't know him. He was nobody she had ever spoken to. He was a man in a gray uniform holding nothing but stillness. And she looked at him the way a drowning person looks at a hand extended from a dock. "Your feet," he said. "Can you feel the floor?" Her brow furrowed slightly. "What?" "The floor. Can you feel it?" Press down. Something shifted in her face. Her attention, scattered and wild a moment ago, narrowed. She pressed her feet down. She felt the floor. It was a small thing, and it was also the most important thing in the room. "Good," he said. "Now your hands. Press them flat on the table." She did. "Now find one thing you can see clearly. Not the whole room. One thing." Her eyes moved and then steadied, and then they landed on the small glass of water near her left hand. "The glass," she said. Her voice was thin but present. "Good. Stay there." His voice never changed. It was not the voice of a man performing calm. It was the voice of a man who had learned, at some point in a life she knew nothing about, that in moments of crisis the only useful thing is an anchor. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. She breathed. The room waited. Richard Harmon's jaw was tight. 2 of the investors had turned to whisper behind their hands. One of the executive assistants near the wall had pressed her fingers to her mouth, and Victoria Shaw breathed. She breathed, and she pressed her feet to the floor and her hands to the table, and she kept her eyes on the glass of water. And slowly, the way a fire calms when you stop feeding it, the panic receded. When the color returned to her face and her breathing lost its ragged edge, he took one step back. "Do you need water?" he asked. She looked at the glass. "Yes." He poured it, handed it to her, stepped back again. She took the water and straightened and looked at the room, and something in her eyes had changed. They were still professional, still sharp, but there was something new in them. Not weakness, but the look of a person who has just been reminded of something they had almost forgotten. She picked up the clicker. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, and her voice was steady. Completely, remarkably steady. "Where were we?" Adam left the room without a word. He retrieved his cart from the hallway. He continued his work. Nobody said anything to him. Not that morning. That evening, he picked Lucas up from the after-school program at 5:30, and they walked home through the April air, the boy talking about his day in the detailed, spiraling way of a 7-year-old who has not yet learned to edit himself. Adam listened to every word. Lucas had drawn a picture in art class. He pulled it from his backpack carefully, protective of it the way children are protective of things they've made with their hands. It was a drawing of 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of something that might have been a building or a mountain or a spaceship. It was hard to tell. "That's us," Lucas said, "and that's where we're going someday." Adam looked at the drawing for a long moment. "Where are we going?" he asked. Lucas thought about it seriously. Somewhere good, he decided. Somewhere with a big yard. Adam folded the drawing carefully and put it in his shirt pocket. That night, after Lucas was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Adam sat at the kitchen table and let himself be tired. Not exhausted. He was past exhausted in the country beyond it where the body operates on something quieter than energy. He sat with his coffee and he thought about the woman in the conference room and the particular look in her eyes when she had found the glass of water to focus on. There were things about Adam Cole's past that his co-workers did not know, that his neighbors did not know, that even Paz and Dolores, with their tamales and their quiet mothering, did not know. He had stood in rooms with higher stakes than a boardroom and talked people down from ledges that were not metaphorical. He had put all of that away deliberately, The way you pack away something valuable because the time for it has passed. Lucas needed a father who came home, not a man whose work took him away in the old way, with the old cost. So Adam Cole swept floors and raised a boy and kept his past in a locked drawer and never complained and never explained. And most days that was enough. The next morning, Gerald caught him near the service elevator. "Harmon wants to talk to you," Gerald said, his voice careful. "About yesterday." Adam looked at him steadily. "Okay," he said. Harmon's office was a corner. Glass walls, city view, the careful arrangement of trophies and framed degrees and industry awards that communicates achievement to everyone who enters. Harmon was at his desk. He did not look up immediately. Itself a communication. "Your time is not worth my instant attention." When he finally looked up, his expression was neutral in the practiced way of a man who has learned to keep his contempt legible, but technically deniable. "I heard what happened in the boardroom yesterday," Harmon said. Adam waited. "You walked into a closed executive meeting." "The door was unlocked," Adam said. "That is not the point." Harmon leaned back. "The point is that you are a custodial employee. There are protocols, there are standards, and you violated them both by inserting yourself into a situation that did not concern you, and that you had no standing to participate in." Adam looked at him. The same look he had given people in other rooms in other years, the look of a man who is deciding how much of himself to show. "Ms. Shaw appeared to be in medical distress," Adam said. "She was not in medical distress. She had a moment. Everyone has moments." The appropriate response was to let her professionals and colleagues manage the situation. Harmon's eyes cooled. "I'm going to be very direct with you. What you did was presumptuous and unprofessional. I'm noting this in your performance record. If something like this happens again, there will be consequences." Adam held the man's gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "Understood," and he turned and left. In the hallway, he stopped for a moment and breathed once, controlled, and then he went back to his cart. He knew what Harmon had not said. He knew that what had actually bothered the man was not the protocol violation, it was the optics. A custodial worker doing something visible in front of people who mattered. Power hates uncertainty, and an invisible man doing something visible was the most uncertain thing in the room. That night, Lucas asked him if anything interesting had happened at work. Adam looked at his son across the dinner table, this small, earnest person with his grandmother's eyes and his own jaw and a mind that was already, at 7, becoming its own fascinating country. "A little," Adam said. "What happened?" Adam thought about the conference room, about the woman's hands on the table, about the glass of water and the breathing, and the way 4 minutes of quiet attention can restore a person to themselves. "I helped someone," he said. Lucas nodded, satisfied. That was, in his experience, a good reason for anything. They did the dishes together, Lucas on the step stool he'd been using since he was 4 because he refused to be the one who didn't help, and Adam handed him things to dry and told him about al dente pasta again, because the boy had asked twice more since breakfast, and Adam believed in explaining things as many times as they needed explaining. At bedtime, Lucas pressed his face into Adam's shoulder the way he did when he was half asleep and said very quietly, "Daddy, you're the strongest person I know." Adam held his son and did not speak for a moment. "Go to sleep, bud," he said finally. But he held on a little longer than he needed to. Victoria Shaw had spent that evening doing something she had not done in years. She had asked someone's name. 3 days passed before anything happened. Adam worked his shifts. He walked Lucas to the bus stop. He did his grocery runs on Saturday mornings with the list he and Lucas built together on Friday nights, a ritual they'd developed the previous year when Lucas had requested, with complete seriousness, to be in charge of the vegetable section. The boy took the responsibility gravely, consulting the produce with the focused attention of a small scientist, occasionally asking Adam to smell something and render an opinion. These were the things that made a life, not the dramatic moments. The smelling of produce. On the 4th morning, Harmon's assistant found Adam in the 14th floor hallway and said, with the careful neutrality of someone delivering a message they had decided not to have opinions about, "Ms. Shaw would like to speak with you when you have a moment." Adam looked at her. The assistant, her name was Christine, he knew because he knew everyone's names even though no one knew his, met his eyes for a second, and then looked away. "I'll finish the hallway first," Adam said. "Of course." He finished the hallway. Systematically. Completely. Then he went to the small conference room adjacent to the CEO's office. Victoria Shaw was standing at the window when he came in. She turned at the sound of the door, and he saw on her face the expression of a person who has prepared something to say, and is now, in the actual moment, uncertain whether to say it. She was dressed the way she always was, precise, expensive, entirely armored, but her posture was slightly different. Something in it was less performed. "Mr. She stopped. "I don't actually know your name." "Adam," he said. "Adam Cole." She nodded. "Victoria Shaw." A pause, and something in the pause acknowledged the absurdity of them introducing themselves as equals in a room that had exactly one visible power dynamic. "I wanted to thank you, what you did 3 days ago, in the meeting. You don't need to thank me. I know I don't need to. I want to." She turned back toward the window briefly, then back to him. "I've had panic attacks before, not many, but a few in the last year. I've been to 2 therapists. I've read 4 books. I have a breathing app on my phone that I have never once opened in an actual crisis, because when the crisis happens, the app is the last thing I can think about." She said this without self-pity, matter-of-factly, the way smart people describe problems they are frustrated not to have solved. "What you did was different. The way you talked to me, the questions. It worked." "It's a grounding technique," Adam said. "The senses. Getting your attention back into your body. It works faster if someone walks you through it." She studied him. The look of a person recalibrating what they're seeing. "Where did you learn that?" He held her gaze for a moment. "A long time ago," he said. "Previous work." She let it go. "For now." "The investors," she said. "2 of them contacted my office the next day. Not about the panic attack." A small pause. "About closing the deal. One of them said, and I am quoting this directly because I have thought about it several times. He said it was the most honest moment he'd ever seen in a funding presentation. That watching someone get back up told him more about the character of a CEO than any financial projection." She stopped. "I don't know what to do with that." Adam looked at her for a moment. He thought about it genuinely, the way he thought about things that deserved real consideration. "You got back up," he said. "That was yours. That had nothing to do with me." She looked at him with a directness that was not aggressive but was not flinching either. The look of someone who has developed the habit of seeing clearly and doesn't always know what to do with what they see. "You're not what I expected," she said. "I don't mean that the way it sounds." "I know what you mean," he said. And he did. And he was not offended, and he did not pretend to be because pretending served no one. "People look at the uniform." "I'm sorry," she said. And she meant it. He could tell because she didn't embellish it or explain it away. She just said it and let it stand. "You don't need to be," Adam said. He nodded and he left. In the hallway, heading back toward his cart, he passed Richard Harmon. Harmon stopped. His eyes went from Adam to the conference room door and back, and the calculation was immediate and visible. The cold arithmetic of a man trying to understand what he'd just witnessed and what it implied. He said nothing. Adam said nothing. They held each other's gaze for precisely as long as 2 men can without it becoming something else, and then both continued on their way without a word. But something had shifted. Both men felt it, differently. That afternoon Adam was working the lower service corridor when Paz found him with the look she reserved for important information, delivered under cover of routine. "You know Harmon has been asking about you," she said, straightening a supply shelf beside him. "I figured," Adam said. "Gerald too. They pulled your file." She glanced at him sideways. "You know what they found?" "Nothing useful to them," Adam said. She looked at him for a long moment. Paz was 61 years old and had 3 sons and had buried a husband and had worked service jobs in tall buildings for 22 years. And she had developed in that time the particular intuition of a woman who has spent decades being invisible and therefore sees everything. "What were you before this?" she asked. It was not the first time she had asked. It was the third. Each time Adam had deflected. This time he looked at her. Really looked. The way you look at someone you trust, and said, "Something I put away." She nodded slowly. The nod of someone accepting an answer without being satisfied by it. "Whatever it was," she said, "it's not as put away as you think." She went back to her section. Adam went back to his. He thought about what she'd said all the way home. On the bus, walking the 4 blocks from the stop, standing at the apartment door finding his key. He thought about the conference room, and the woman at the window, and the way a room full of powerful people had frozen while a man in a gray uniform had walked in and done the only useful thing. Lucas was at the kitchen table when he came in, homework spread in front of him with the organized chaos of a child who works better in apparent disorder. He looked up when Adam came in, and his whole face rearranged itself into something unguarded and glad. "Daddy," he said, "I learned a new word today," said with the pride of an explorer returning from an expedition. "Resilient." Adam set his bag down and looked at his son. "Do you know what it means?" he asked. Lucas thought hard. "Like when something gets bent but doesn't break?" Adam looked at him for a long moment. "Yeah," he said. "That's exactly what it means." He went to the kitchen and started dinner. And Lucas read his word aloud 3 more times from a worksheet, and the apartment smelled of garlic and city noise came through the window, and everything was ordinary, and everything was about to change. Because Victoria Shaw, in her office 11 floors above, had opened a file she had no official reason to pull. His name, his social security number, his 2 years of spotless employment, standard, ordinary, and then, one record that did not fit. A single flag, from a background system most HR departments never thought to query. A clearance level, inactive, expired, marked closed 7 years ago. But there, undeniably there. The kind of clearance that is not given to men who sweep floors. The kind that, once seen, cannot be unseen. She stared at the screen for a long time. Outside her window, the city moved at its indifferent scale. 10,000 lives crossing 10,000 other lives, most of them never knowing what they had passed. She thought about the man in the gray uniform, the steadiness of his voice, the way he had not rushed, had not performed, had not needed her to be grateful. He had simply done the thing that needed doing, with the economy of a person for whom that kind of action was not extraordinary, it was ordinary. She had been in rooms with some of the most talented people in her industry. She had hired consultants who charged $400 an hour to teach the precise skill that Adam Cole had deployed with nothing but quiet words and an unhurried presence. None of them had ever worked like that. She closed the file, opened it again, and picked up the phone. 3 floors below, Adam Cole ran his mop along the baseboards and thought about nothing except the fact that tomorrow was Saturday, and Lucas wanted pancakes, and he had remembered to buy the good maple syrup. He did not know what was coming. He never did. That had always been, somehow, his greatest strength. There is a particular kind of pressure that does not announce itself. It does not arrive as a threat or a confrontation. It arrives as atmosphere. A slow thickening of the air around a man. A series of small signals that accumulate like water finding cracks in stone. Adam Cole had been living inside that pressure for 11 days now, and he recognized it the way a man who has been in difficult places before recognizes the geography of danger. Not with alarm, but with a quiet, calibrating attention. Harmon had been methodical about it, not cruel in any way that could be named directly, nothing that would appear in a report or survive a formal complaint. Instead, there were the reassignments, floors that were less visible, corridors that were farther from the executive level, shift changes that broke the rhythm of Adam's day in ways that were almost but not quite inconvenient enough to constitute harassment. There was the way Harmon moved through the building now, slightly louder, slightly more present on the floors where Adam worked, as if the man had decided that his own visibility was the most efficient form of pressure. There was the performance review that Gerald showed Adam with visible discomfort, a document that praised his work in language so careful and measured that the praise itself felt like a warning. "You don't have to tell me what's going on," Gerald said, setting the review on the cart between them. "But whatever it is, be careful." Adam looked at him. Gerald was a fair man, A decent man. A man who had built a small, honest life in the machinery of a large, indifferent company, and had learned to protect that life by not asking questions he couldn't do anything about. Adam respected that. He understood it completely. "I'm always careful," Adam said. Gerald nodded, picked up the review, and walked away. He did not look back. Men like Gerald had learned that looking back was how you got pulled into things. Adam pushed his cart to the next section and kept working. The thing about being a man who has spent years doing hard things quietly is that the quiet becomes a kind of armor. Not the showy armor of men who perform toughness, the raised voice, the aggressive posture, the need to make their endurance visible, the real armor, the kind that is forged in years of showing up when showing up is the only thing left to do. Adam wore that armor every day, and most days it was sufficient and some days it was all he had. On a Thursday morning in the break room on the 12th floor, two of Harmon's junior associates came in while Adam was restocking the coffee station. They were mid-conversation, the kind that men carry between themselves when they assume no one worth considering is present. Adam had heard 1,000 versions of it over 2 years. He kept his back to them and worked. "He's not going to last," the first one said. Adam did not turn around. He restocked the filters. He checked the water reservoir. "Harmon doesn't need him gone. He just needs him small," the second said. A pause, which apparently is going well. They took their coffees and left. Adam set down the filter bag he was holding and stood at the counter for a moment. He looked at the wall. He breathed once, deliberate and slow, the way he had learned to breathe in rooms with much higher stakes than this one. Then he picked up the filter bag and finished the job. He thought about Lucas. He always came back to Lucas when the world tried to make him small, not as distraction, as anchor, as the reason the armor had been built in the first place. There was a drawing on the refrigerator at home, held up by a magnet shaped like a fish that Lucas had picked out at a gas station 2 summers ago. The drawing of the 2 figures, the tall one and the small one, going somewhere good. Adam had looked at that drawing every morning for 2 weeks now. Not with sentiment, with intention, with the steady, private knowledge that whatever was happening at Nexus Digital Solutions was not the story. It was a chapter. Possibly a difficult one, but not the story. He had been in worse chapters. Saturday came the way Saturdays always did, slower, with more light. Lucas was up before Adam, which was unusual, and was standing in the kitchen in his socks with a very serious expression on his face and a bowl already out on the counter. "Pancakes," Lucas announced. "I'm going to help." Adam looked at his son. 7 years old and already occupying himself with purpose. "You're going to help," Adam said. "I looked up the recipe. On the iPad." Lucas held up the tablet. The screen showed a recipe page he had navigated to himself, complete with a photo that had apparently convinced him pancakes were achievable. "It says we need baking powder. Do we have baking powder?" Adam checked the cabinet. They had baking powder. They had the good maple syrup. They had everything. He stood at the counter with his son and they made pancakes together, Lucas narrating each step with the authority of someone who had read about it once and was now the resident expert. Adam correcting gently when necessary and letting the boy lead when he could. And the Saturday morning light came through the kitchen window and turned everything warm and gold. They ate at the table. Lucas had stacked his pancakes in what he described as a tower formation. Adam watched him eat and thought about nothing for a while, which was its own kind of relief. "Daddy?" Lucas said, mouth slightly full in the way Adam had been correcting for a year without total success. "Do you like your job?" Adam considered the question seriously, the way he considered all of Lucas's questions. "I like the people," he said. "Paz and Dolores." "Gerald." Lucas thought about this. "What about the other people?" "Some of them are harder to like." Adam cut his pancake. "That happens everywhere. My teacher says that hard people are usually hurting about something," Lucas said. He said it with the casual certainty of a child passing on wisdom they have not yet tested against a full life. Adam looked at his son, 7 years old. He thought about Harmon, the pointed finger, the coolly calculated pressure, the man who had leaned back while a woman collapsed. He thought about what might be hurting in a man like that. What wound might drive a person to need a janitor's invisible life on record as a threat managed? Your teacher is a smart person, Adam said. Lucas looked satisfied. He finished his tower. Monday brought something Adam had not expected. He was on the 14th floor at 8:20 in the morning, early, running ahead of schedule, when the elevator opened and Victoria Shaw stepped out alone, not in the company of assistants or executives. Not mid-conversation, not performing the arrival. Just a woman in a coat, carrying a coffee cup from the shop around the corner, moving through her own building with something that looked almost like privacy. She saw him immediately. She did not look past him or through him the way most people on that floor did. She looked at him directly, the way she had in the small conference room with that recalibrating attention he was beginning to recognize as simply how she saw things. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," Adam said. She slowed. Not a stop. A slowdown. The pace of someone who has decided to acknowledge that a conversation is occurring. "How are you?" she asked. Simply, without the performance of it. Adam looked at her. In 2 years and 3 months in this building, no one above him in the hierarchy had asked him that question, not once. He did not perform surprise. He simply answered honestly, "Good, thank you." She nodded. Then, without preamble, "I want you to know that what Harmon is doing is not sanctioned by me. I'm aware of it. I'm handling it." The directness of it landed with a weight Adam had not anticipated. He kept his face steady. "You don't need to involve yourself," he said. "I'm already involved," she said. "You walked into my meeting." A pause that was not cold. "And I'm glad you did." She continued down the hallway. Adam watched her go and then turned back to his cart and stood for a moment with his hands on the handle and felt something he had not permitted himself to feel in a long time. The distant but unmistakable sensation of a tide beginning to turn. He did not know yet what she had found in his file. He did not know that she had made 3 phone calls in the past week, to 3 different people in 3 different cities, asking 3 different versions of the same question. He did not know that the answers had arrived, and that they had changed everything she thought she understood about the man pushing the cart in her hallway. He would find out. But not yet. For now he pushed the cart, and the building hummed around him. And somewhere across the city his son was sitting in a classroom learning new words, and everything was still ordinary, and nothing would be ordinary much longer. The meeting was called for a Wednesday. Not a large meeting, not a boardroom event. A small conference room on the 14th floor, the kind used for conversations that require walls and a door. The kind used for things that need to be said without an audience. Victoria Shaw had sent the invitation herself, directly to Adam's company email. The address that existed in the HR system. The one he checked once a week, if that, because it was rarely used for anything that concerned him. Christine had also left a handwritten note in his locker. "Please come. It matters." Adam had read both. He had said nothing to anyone. He had gone about his Tuesday the way he went about all Tuesdays. Arrived at 7:45. Changed into his uniform. Completed his sections. Picked up Lucas at 5:30. Made dinner. Did the dishes. Read with his son for 40 minutes before bed. Sat at the kitchen table with his coffee in the dark afterward, and thought about what Wednesday might contain. He had not allowed himself to speculate too far. Speculation in his experience was rarely useful. The thing would be what it would be, and he would respond to it as it actually was, not as he had imagined it. That discipline had served him across a great many rooms, in a great many circumstances. It would serve him now. He arrived at the conference room at the agreed time. 8:30 in the morning. The building was in its early rhythm, the first wave of arrivals, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of elevators. He knocked once and opened the door. Victoria Shaw was there. Christine, her assistant, was there. And there was a third person, a man Adam did not know. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, the particular bearing of someone who had spent years in environments where bearing was the first thing assessed. The man looked at Adam when he entered, and something in his face changed, a small, controlled shift. There and gone. Recognition. Contained but real, but... Adam looked at the man for 1 second. Then he looked at Victoria Shaw. Sit down, please, she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. The tone of a person who has prepared for a significant conversation and is now inside it. Adam sat. The man across the table said nothing yet. I pulled your background file, Victoria said, 3 weeks ago. What I found, there was a record that didn't fit. A federal clearance level. Inactive. Expired 7 years ago. I made some calls. She paused. I want you to know that I'm not here to expose anything or to make demands. I needed to understand who I was dealing with. Adam looked at her steadily. What did you find? He asked. His voice was level. It did not shake. It did not harden. Victoria looked at the man across the table. He leaned forward slightly, the way men lean when they have decided to speak with authority and want the posture to precede the words. My name is Raymond Voss, the man said. I ran a federal crisis intervention unit out of Washington for 12 years. Your name was on my team for 4 of those years. Adam Cole. He said the name slowly, as though it had weight. You were one of the most gifted field counselors I ever deployed. Hostage negotiations, mass crisis events, domestic terrorism incidents. You had a record that made people in that building very uncomfortable, because you made the impossible look quiet. The room was very still. Adam looked at Raymond Voss and did not speak. You left 7 years ago, Voss said. I know why you left. Your wife had just died. You had a 3-month-old son. You chose your son. A pause. I respected it then. I respect it now. Adam Cole had not always swept floors. Before the gray uniform and the mop and the marble corridors and the invisible life, there had been another Adam Cole, one who had walked into rooms where people were in the worst moments of their lives. Rooms barricaded and burning, and beyond the reach of ordinary help, and had talked them back to the edge of survivable. He had done it with his voice, with his presence, with a quality of attention so precise and so calm that the people inside those rooms, the desperate, the terrified, the ones who had run out of reasons, found themselves choosing to come back. He had never carried a weapon in the field. He had never needed one. He had been, in the language of the unit, a primary de-escalator, the man you sent in when everything else had failed, the man whose voice could reach through walls. And then his wife had died on a Tuesday in February, of a thing that came quickly and left no room for negotiation. And he had looked at his 3-month-old son and made the only choice that mattered. I don't know what you want from me, Adam said. His voice was quiet. Not defensive, not closed, just honest. Nothing, Victoria said immediately. I don't want anything from you, She stopped, tried again. I've been building this company for 6 years. I have 400 employees. I have investors and deadlines and a COO who thinks leadership is a dominance hierarchy. And 3 weeks ago, a man in a cleaning uniform walked into the worst moment I've had in public in my adult life and fixed it in 4 minutes with nothing but words and presence. And I needed to know. I just needed to know who that was. Adam looked at her for a long moment. That's just who I am, he said. I know, she said. That's what I couldn't understand at first. There was no strategy in it, no agenda. You just helped. It needed doing, he said. Nobody else was doing it. Something moved across her face. Something that was not entirely professional. A flicker of something older and less guarded. That's exactly it, she said. Nobody else was doing it. Raymond Voss spoke again. I want to be clear. I'm not here to recruit you. I retired 18 months ago. I'm here because Victoria called me and I owed her an honest conversation. And because when I heard your name I wanted to see for myself. He looked at Adam directly. You look well. I am well, Adam said. Your son? 7 years old, sharp as a tack. The words came out without effort. They were the truest thing he had said in that room. Something in Voss's face relaxed. The official bearing eased slightly into something more human. Good, he said. That's good. He stood, extending his hand. Adam shook it. The grip of 2 men who had once operated in the same world. Brief, firm, complete. For what it's worth, Voss said. What you did 3 weeks ago was the same thing you used to do. The technique, yes. But more than that, the decision to act when everyone else waited, that never came from training. That came from you. He left the room. Christine left quietly behind him, and Adam and Victoria Shaw sat across from each other in the small conference room, and the building moved around them. And for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I want to offer you something," Victoria said finally. "Not charity, not pity, a real thing." She leaned forward slightly. "I have 400 people in this company who are talented and ambitious, and completely unable to talk to each other when it matters. Who freeze in conflict, who collapse under pressure because they've never been taught that pressure doesn't have to mean catastrophe. What you did in that boardroom, what you did in 4 minutes, I've paid consultants $60,000 a year to try to build that into this company, and none of them came close." Adam looked at her. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to talk," she said. "Not immediately, not on my timeline, on yours. I want to understand what you know about how people come back from the edge. I think this company needs it. I think I need it." A pause. "And I think you deserve to be seen." The last sentence arrived quietly and landed with an unexpected weight. Adam looked at the table for a moment. He thought about the break room and the 2 men who had spoken about making him small. He thought about Harmon's file note and Gerald's careful face. He thought about Paz saying it's not as put away as you think. He thought about Lucas asking him if he liked his job, and answering honestly that he liked the people. "I'll think about it," he said. Victoria nodded. She did not push. He had noticed in their few conversations that she did not push. She extended and then waited, which was a quality so rare in people with her level of authority that it registered as almost startling each time. "There's one more thing," she said. She picked up a single sheet of paper from the table and slid it across to him. "Harmon filed a formal recommendation this morning to have your position reclassified, a restructuring argument. Essentially, it would eliminate your role." Adam looked at the paper. "Read it once. Set it down." "I've already rejected it," Victoria said. "I want you to know that." He looked at her. "Why are you telling me?" "Because you should know," she said simply. "Because a man who shows up every day and does his work well and asks nothing of anyone deserves to know when someone is working against him." Her jaw was steady. There was something in her eyes that was not soft. It was something harder and cleaner than soft. It was respect. "And because what Harmon is doing stops now." Adam folded the paper once and set it back on the table. He looked at Victoria Shaw, this woman who had built a $400 million company and cracked in front of the people she most needed to impress and then gotten back up. And he thought about what it cost a person to be seen clearly and choose honesty anyway. He knew something about that cost. He had paid it before, in rooms much darker than this one. "Thank you," he said. And he meant it in a way that included more than the moment. Victoria Shaw nodded, and Richard Harmon, 2 offices away, did not yet know that the ground had shifted entirely beneath his feet. The morning Richard Harmon walked into the all-hands meeting and found Adam Cole seated at the conference table, not behind a cart, not near the service door, not occupying the peripheral space that the invisible are assigned by default, but seated at the table itself beside Victoria Shaw with a name card in front of him that read Adam Cole. Crisis Communication Consultant, was the morning that something broke in Richard Harmon's architecture of certainty. It did not break loudly. Men like Harmon do not break loudly. It broke the way expensive things break, cleanly, precisely, and with the particular silence of something that will not be repaired. There were 43 people in that room. Executives, directors, senior staff, the 2 investors who had been there the morning Victoria Shaw had stopped mid-presentation, and a janitor had walked in and restored order. Those 2 investors were present because Victoria had called them personally and said she had something worth seeing. They had come because in the weeks since the funding meeting they had signed the deal, because one of them had said, privately, to the other, that the character of a company is most visible in how it treats the people it doesn't have to treat well. Adam had not known until that morning the full scope of what Victoria had arranged. She had told him only that she wanted to introduce him to the company in his real capacity, not as a consultant in the future tense, but as the person he already was, formalized. She had said it cleanly and without theater. "You have a skill that this company needs and that its people would benefit from. I'd like to introduce you properly, if you're willing." He had been willing. He had called Paz the night before and told her simply that something was changing. She had been quiet for a moment and then said, "Good, it's time." He had not told Lucas everything. Lucas was 7. But he had told him that there might be something new at work, something different, and Lucas had looked at him with those steady eyes and said, "Is it good different?" And Adam had looked at his son and said, "I think so, bud. Yeah, I think it's good different." Victoria opened the meeting the way she opened all of them, directly without preamble. She was a woman who had learned that the most powerful thing in a room is often the thing said plainest. 3 weeks ago in a meeting in this building, I had a panic attack in front of 6 investors and most of this leadership team. She let that sit. No apology in her voice, no performance of shame, just the fact, stated cleanly. Some of you were there. Most of you have heard about it. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. And I'm not going to frame it as a moment of weakness because I've decided it isn't one. What it was a moment of being human, publicly, in front of people who expected me not to be. The room was completely still. The person who helped me through it is sitting at this table. His name is Adam Cole. For the past 2 years, he has worked in this building as a member of the custodial staff, doing that job with more professionalism and more quiet dignity than most people in this room bring to jobs with 3 times the visibility. Her voice did not waver. Before that, for 4 years, he was a federal crisis intervention specialist, a primary de-escalator deployed in hostage negotiations, mass crisis events, and situations where conventional approaches had failed. He left that career to raise his son alone after the death of his wife. He has been in this building every day, invisible to most of us, carrying that history in silence and asking nothing. The silence in the room was different now. It had weight. It had direction. "I am not introducing him to you as a charity case or a story," Victoria continued. "I'm introducing him because this company has a problem that money and ambition and talent cannot fix on their own. We do not know how to talk to each other when it matters most. We freeze in conflict. We collapse under pressure. We perform strength instead of building it." She looked around the room. Adam Cole knows how to help with that, genuinely. And starting today, in a formal capacity, he will. Adam did not give a speech. That was not his way, and Victoria had not asked for one. She had asked him to say whatever he felt was necessary. And what he felt was necessary was not much. He looked at the room. 43 faces. Some open, some uncertain, some, Harmon's, at the far end of the table, held in a careful, tightened neutrality that communicated nothing and contained everything. "I'm not going to tell you what I've done," Adam said. "You can look that up if you want to. What I'll tell you is what I believe." He paused once. "I believe that the most important skill a person can have, in a boardroom, in a crisis, in a marriage, in a conversation at 2 in the morning when someone is falling apart, is the ability to stay present. Not to fix, not to perform, to stay. Most people haven't been taught that. Most people, when someone around them is in crisis, take a step back." He did not look at Harmon, but several people in the room did. Taking a step forward is learnable. That's what I know how to teach. He stopped there. It was enough. The room knew it was enough. One of the investors, the older one, the one who had said a panic attack told him more about a CEO than any projection, leaned toward the other and said something low and brief. The other one nodded. Harmon resigned 11 days later. Not publicly, not dramatically, the way men of his type exit situations that have moved beyond their control. A carefully worded mutual agreement, effective at month's end, the kind of departure that is framed as a transition and understood by everyone as what it actually is. He shook hands with Victoria in her office, and the handshake was performed and precise, and meant nothing except that both of them had decided this was the cleanest way through. He did not speak to Adam again. Some reckonings do not come with speeches, they come with absence. Adam kept his custodial position through the transition, his choice, not circumstance. Victoria had offered him an office. He had declined, gently, but without ambiguity. "I'll take the consulting work," he said. "But I like keeping the building right. It matters to me." She had looked at him for a moment and then nodded because she understood by then that there were things about Adam Cole that were not going to change, and that changing them would be a loss. Paz cried when she found out. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when something you have been quietly holding out for finally arrives. She grabbed Adam by the arm in the supply corridor and said, "I knew it. I told you. I told you it was time." Adam let her hold his arm and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would improve on what she had already said. Dolores left a note under his locker. It said, "A good man's patience is not weakness, it is preparation." She denied writing it, as she always did. On a Friday in April, 2 months after the morning in the conference room, Adam picked Lucas up from school, and they walked home through the kind of spring afternoon that arrives like a gift. Warm without being hot. The light long and unhurried, the city moving at a pace that allowed itself to be noticed. Lucas walked beside him with his backpack and his sneakers, and his 7-year-old's encyclopedic commentary on the afternoon's events, and Adam listened to every word. They stopped at the corner store for orange juice and a candy bar that Adam allowed on Fridays as a rule he had established, and that Lucas had committed to memory with the fidelity of constitutional law. The man behind the counter, whom they had been buying from for a year and a half, looked at Lucas and said, "He's got your eyes, man." And Adam looked at his son and said, "Yeah, he does." At home, while Lucas did his homework at the kitchen table, Adam stood at the window with his coffee and looked at the city and thought about everything that had happened and everything that was still happening and the wide, uncharted territory of what might come next. He thought about the unit he had left 7 years ago, and Raymond Voss's face in the conference room, and the way some things that are buried do not stay buried, not because they refuse to rest, but because the world keeps finding reasons to need them. He thought about his wife. He thought about her the way he always did, not with the acute pain of the early years, which had been a pain without edges, a pain that occupied everything, but with the quieter, more particular ache of someone who has carried a loss long enough to carry it differently. She had been a woman who believed, with a conviction that was not naive but was genuinely unshakable, that people were mostly worth the effort. He had not always agreed with her. He agreed with her more every year. Daddy. Lucas was standing in the kitchen doorway, homework in hand, pencil behind his ear, the posture of a boy who has something important to report. "Yeah, bud. I finished." He held up the worksheet as evidence. "Can we draw tonight, after dinner?" Adam looked at his son. This small, whole, entirely particular person, 7 years old and already possessed of more moral clarity than most adults Adam had known in professional capacities across multiple fields. This person who had said, "You're the strongest person I know," in the dark with no audience because he meant it. "Yeah," Adam said. "We can draw." Lucas nodded, satisfied, and disappeared back to the table. They drew after dinner. Lucas drew their building, the glass tower, recognizable by the flags out front that he had asked about and Adam had explained. He drew 2 figures standing outside it, the tall one and the small one. He drew them with a careful attention to detail that suggested he had thought about it before picking up the pencil. When he was done, he held it up. "Look," he said. Adam looked. The 2 figures were standing in front of the tower, and Lucas had drawn a door, a large door open, with light coming through it. Not the service entrance, not the side door, the front door, the one with the marble steps and the waterfall in the lobby, and the receptionist who wore clothes that cost more than rent. The front door, open, both of them going in, of. Adam looked at that drawing for a long time. "Can I keep this one?" he asked. Lucas considered it with the seriousness of a 7-year-old assessing a significant request. Then he handed it over. "You can keep it," he said. "I'll make another one." Adam folded it, placed it in his shirt pocket over his heart, the same place the first one had gone. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Adam sat at the kitchen table and held the folded drawing and was quiet for a long time. He thought about what it meant to build a life out of the unglamorous materials, the early mornings, the packed lunches, the buses and the mops in the break rooms, and the long years of being invisible and honest and present. He thought about what his grandmother had told him about pain paying attention, and what Paz had said about things not being as put away as you think. and what Voss had said about the decision to act, not coming from training. He thought about the front door. Open. Light coming through. A man is not the sum of what the world assigns him. He is the sum of what he does when no one is watching. When there is no reward, no audience, no record. He is the 4 minutes in a boardroom that cost him nothing but presence. He is the breakfast made before dawn for a boy who will someday grow into a man and carry forward something of what was shown him, without always knowing where it came from. He is the step forward when everyone else takes a step back. Adam Cole put the drawing back in his pocket. He rinsed his coffee cup. He checked on his son, sleeping, steady, the brow slightly furrowed in its habitual dream concentration, the face of a person working something out. He turned off the light. Tomorrow he would go back to the building. He would do his work. He would ride the elevator to the 14th floor and walk the hallway he knew by heart and be, as he had always been, exactly who he was. No more, no less. Without apology, without performance. Only now the door was open. And the light was coming through. Some men are never truly invisible. The world just takes a while to learn how to see them.